The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for Short Time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
Now up on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, I bet you did not know that there is actually college wrestling going on right now. But if you're from the state of California, you do know because it's been going on like that for 30-something years. Our guest today is going to talk a little bit about California Community College Wrestling. He is the head wrestling coach at Cerritos College in, I believe that's Norwalk, California, right, Coach?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Don Garriott, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Jason. I'm glad to be on it.
All right, so for those who are under a rock, and I've been trying to wave the flag of the California Community College Wrestling Circuit for a while. John Sachs, also at techfall.com. He runs caccwrestling.com, which is kind of an independent source of California Community College Wrestling news. But for those who are unaware, explain what's unique about the California system for somebody who has absolutely no idea what's going on.
Well, our system is strictly California schools. We compete within the state against each other. I think right now there's 20 programs, which is down quite a bit from the 70s and 80s when there was 50, 60 programs that were wrestling at that time. We're a fall sport. That happened before I even started wrestling in community college in the 80s. So I'm not sure what the push was to move it to a fall sport. But yeah, that's much different than the rest of the country and the high school season and the four-year college season. So that's one of the things that kind of separates us.
And similar to the NAIA, recently you guys have gone to where you can add multiple entries at the qualifier system to get more than one wrestler per weight class to the state championship. Yeah,
this I think it's been, I want to say 3 years now. With the reduction of programs, a lot of good kids, California has a lot of kids wrestling. We're just a big state. And a lot of good kids were getting stuck at programs, behind somebody else when they potentially could have been a state placer also. And I think it was kind of hurting some opportunities for kids. So we went to the 12-man. So if someone was in a weight class where they were behind a guy ranked first or second in the state, but they may be a 4, 5, or 6, they were going to have an opportunity to get to the state meet also.
And we have had an instance or two where teammates have met in the state finals.
Yeah, I think it was the first year we our heavyweights met in the state finals, wrestle against each other. So
yeah, I think it's also happened to one of Pacheco's guys up at Sac City as well. But I'll have to go, or it might have been Santa Ana. I'm not quite sure.
No, it was last year. Last year at I want to say 65s. His two guys wrestled each other in the finals.
Yeah, that's got to be nerve-wracking as a coach. I can only imagine.
It's actually not. It's actually easier. You just sit back, tell them, look, we're going to put the way we do it is we let them, okay, you tell me which coach you want, you tell me which coaches you want. They're going to sit there and they're going to coach against, each other just like they didn't know the other kid, and I don't choose either side. I just sit back and watch. So it's actually pretty less nerve-wracking for me and kind of fun because I can just sit back and watch, and I'm a winner either way, so.
Now, from the layout of the state, where you guys are located, for those who are unfamiliar where Norwalk is, it's basically a suburb of Los Angeles, and that entire between L.A. and Anaheim. For those who are familiar with Weird Al, straight out of Linwood, that particular area. So with the community college system, the way it works, where is your available pool of athletes from? Where are you drawing from? And how do you basically recruit athletes to the two-year junior colleges in California?
Well, recently we've opened up the state. So recently I can recruit from anywhere in the state now. I can't recruit out of state without a first contact from the student, but I can recruit everywhere within the state. There's a couple restrictions how I can do that. My general area, I can make first contact. I can go and visit the students. I can do those things. Outside of my area, it has to be electronic contact or phone calls. I can't meet with the student in person until they come to my school. Mostly our kids come from within a I would say a 30-mile radius of the school. We don't get a lot of kids from outside. We don't have dorms on campus. We're non-scholarship. So most of our program, the kids in our program come from within a 30-mile radius.
Yeah, and so some people say that that makes things a little easier. Some say it makes it tougher. I mean, when you're experiencing coaching, is this a benefit to have? Okay, this is our radius. This is what I got to deal with, and knowing that there's so many wrestlers in California, do you really have to go that far to find good kids to fill your lineup?
It depends on the area you're in the state. I mean, we in the southern section, we're in what would be the southern section for the high school group. The two toughest sections in our state are the central section, the Clovises and the Fresno schools, and then the southern section. The southern section has great programs, and it just has a mass amount of numbers. I think there's 300 and some schools that have high school wrestling in the southern section. So for me, that's a benefit where I'm at. It can be a little rough because down here I'm also recruiting against, I think, 5 or 6 other of the community colleges that are right down here in this area also. So it's a benefit and it's a curse also that I'm in such a populated area because there's a lot of kids to choose from, but I have a lot of competition from the other junior colleges that are in this area.
Now, moving on to the next level is one thing that a lot of these California kids go. I mean, now with Cal Baptist starting a program, of course, Lars Jensen up at San Francisco State has been reaping the benefits of the California junior college kids for a number of years. But with the programs popping up, we've got new coaches in Division I. Cerritos now at Cal Poly. We got a new program at Fresno State. We got just new coaches everywhere. And what's it like to be a junior college coach right now with the level of college wrestling at the Division I level that's starting to looks like it's starting to kind of have a little bit of a revival out there?
Well, I mean, with us, as far as pushing kids off to the next level, our kids are if you're successful at the junior college level here in California, you really most of our kids will translate and be really successful at the NAIA level. A lot of our kids are succeeding there athletically. A lot of our kids are succeeding at the Division II level. But every once in a while we get that kid who is a D1 kid. I'm pretty honest with my kids and give them my opinion on whether I think they're a D1 kid. I mean, every kid thinks they're a D1 kid, but that's not the reality of it. I've probably had, since I've been here in 11 years, maybe 3 kids that I really felt were D1 competitive. Is that All-American? I don't know if that's All-American, but I definitely felt like they could push for a starting spot on the roster. We had a kid, Mike Kenline, I think from my 3rd or 4th year, who I really felt that way about him and put him out to Nebraska and Coach Manning, and he ended up being a 2-year starter for him at 141. So, we do have D1 kids, but I would say for the most part, most of our kids are really competitive at the Division II and NAIA level.
Yeah, it's nice to have like down there. You talk about the southern part. We talked about Lars up at San Francisco State in the San Francisco area, but having Cal Baptist down there also that's an opportunity for kids in that particular part of the state to get a Division II opportunity. I mean, how has that benefited your kids and your program and maybe the other junior colleges in that area?
I think it's great. I think it can be a really symbiotic relationship. I've had 3 of my kids that have gone on and wrestled at Cal Baptist. So having that opportunity nearby is great. The kids don't have to go far from home. It gives the Cal Baptist coaching staff a lot of opportunities to look at our kids to really make sure that it's the right fit for their program. So that hopefully there'll be, success right away when the kids get there and they're not surprised by anything and things like that. So, yeah, definitely having Cal Baptist down here has raised the opportunities and the potential for our guys down here.
Let's talk about you a little bit, and before we get into this season, you wrestled in the California Community College system. You also wrestled Division II at Cal State Chico, and actually, I got to give one of the patrons of the Matt Talk Podcast Network a little bit of a plug here because he's the one that mentioned Cal State Chico, and I'm going through my Division II All-Americans today. Stumble upon, there you are, my guest today, Division II All-American, and 5th in, was it 1991? What's 134 pounds?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, and so I got to give Rodney Williams a little shout out for kind of pushing me in that direction to dig it up. So you said you guys were on that last team. Let's talk about that that transition from the junior college to Division II. How did you deal with it? I mean, what was it like wrestling back then when you were wrestling for El Camino and then heading to the Division II level at Cal State Chico?
Again, back then there was just a lot more programs in the state, so it was just a very natural progression for a lot of the JC kids that were placed in our state meet and stuff. There wasn't a lot of NAI schools like there is now. I didn't really know a lot about NAI. I think the only one I really knew about was Southern Oregon at the time. So when it came time for me to leave El Camino, I went on a couple trips to Humboldt and San Francisco State and Chico State. I loved Chico State and the coaching staff and the team there, and so that's where I chose. So the actual transition at that time wasn't that much, other than the intensity in the room was higher than what I was used to, and after a couple months you adjust to that. But yeah, it wasn't that great of a transition. They were just, our whole team was basically, I would say 2/3 of our team were junior college transfers at that time, and once Chico dropped the program, I think it was like 2 or 3 years later that San Francisco State won the national Division II title with an almost all junior college transfer team. So it was just a natural progression back then.
So when it comes to coaching this type of thing, how much of your experiences do you draw on to when you're talking about kids about what they do? Because it's a 2-year school, it's kind of hard to build really a program because every 2.5 years you've got a fresh set of kids coming through. And what is your role, not just as a wrestling coach, but there for the kids and preparing them for that next level of their life?
Well, I taught and coached high school for 18 years before I came here to Cerritos. So the two experiences are vastly different. At the high school level, they come in as these skinny or pudgy little freshman kids, and you really make an impact on the human being that they are at that time. I got very used to that, becoming a father figure for a lot of kids, or, more than just a wrestling coach. Came to the junior college, and although I brought a lot of that philosophy with me, it's harder to do. A lot of times when they get to here, they're kind of already who they're going to be. You don't make as much of an impact on them as a human being as you do at the high school level. So now I think my role has turned more as a filter. I need to filter out the kids that are going to have the potential to move to the next level, and more of a guider and a mentor when it comes to that aspect. Hey, you have the potential to get your schooling paid for at the next level and still continue to compete and things like that. So I think I take those kids and make sure that they're staying on the right track as far as that goes now.
Some of your coaching runs, you were a high school coach for a while, and then kind of serving a dual role, college and high school. And then I noticed something in your bio that you had coached at Golden West for a while, right around the time Tito Ortiz is coming through. And for those who have been living under a rock for a while, Tito Ortiz fought in the UFC for a long, long time, still prevalent in MMA, and he was a California junior college state champion in 1996, right smack dab in the time you were there. What was it like working out with Tito?
Well, I chose not to work out with Tito.
What was it? Okay, let's see. What was it like to watch Tito work out and try to coach Tito?
Tito was a really hard worker. A lot of the persona he puts on, for the UFC and all that kind of stuff. Part of that is Tito. He's never been a shy guy, but as far as a person, he trains hard. He always trained hard. He always did extra. We had a pretty good team at that time. We also had Raphael Davis, who ended up being an NCAA Division I All-American for Cal State Bakersfield, and was Stephen Neal's workout partner while he was there. So we had a great group of guys, and Tito was definitely the leader of the team, and a fun guy to be around, and a good human being. He didn't have the greatest upbringing, but he definitely made the most of what he was given. So
when you go through the world of California wrestling, you get those guys that come through that are just, like you said, the 1 or 2 or 3 kids that you've had you thought are D1. When you get somebody special walk in your room like that, and is there a situation where you're like, okay, I'm just going to teach this guy as much as I can? Or at what point does a coach, you have to step back and be like, this kid's going to definitely, he's going to surpass me in wrestling knowledge. I just got to sit there and be there for him.
Well, I'm not sure that anyone will ever surpass me in wrestling knowledge, but
I think you know what I'm getting at, though. The super talented kid that's like, okay,
right. No, there's if that's the case, I'll reach out. I try and bring people in that can can add to them, whether it's someone who can work out with them and give them that push every day, or, someone who's more current with techniques and things like that. I mean, I'm getting a little older. It gets a little hard for me to stay up with, current techniques that are going on as far as actually getting out and teaching them. So I definitely make sure I bring back younger staff and things like that. I have a couple Division II All-Americans that I coached and then have come back and are helping me coach. So I'm always going to make sure that I have that type of person in the room that can help these athletes in these different areas to go along with just my guidance and stuff. And then the other thing you hope is if you get a kid that has that kind of talent, that he's going to have the academic foundation to be a Division I wrestler also, because, I mean, it gets harder and harder to obtain any sort of scholarship for Division I, or even, get a coach interested in you if you don't have that academic foundation also. They just can't take the chance on you now. So
let's go back a couple years ago. You guys won the California State Championships in 2014 in a tight race with Fresno City. And you look at the history of the last 10 years of the California community colleges, and Fresno City and Coach Paul Keesaw, his teams have been right there. I mean, they've been second the last 3 years. Before that, they won it 3 straight years. I mean, what is it about coaches like you and Coach Keesaw and like Coach Pacheco up at Sac City that you sit there, you got some tenure there, and you really you have that 2 years to build a team, but it seems like it goes on beyond the 2 years that those athletes are there?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, I think we each have different circumstances. You look at Paul's situation in up in Fresno. He's kind of the only game around, within a 2-hour radius in an area that has really good kids. And then you add the fact that he's not only an exceptional coach, he's an exceptional human being who people gravitate to, like to be around, things like that. And you kind of have the perfect storm there for a successful program. Down here, I'm fighting a little bit more with other programs for kids, and we get, we get spread out a little bit as far as the talent. But I think Cerritos has always had, even before I came here, had the reputation of having a good program. We have a lot of support from the college here for athletics, and that helps me a lot because I'm not scrambling trying to raise money to run the program and things like that. So I can spend time trying to recruit the right kids and give them the attention that they want, because a lot of kids like attention now, so that they come here and can help us to keep our program at a certain level and stuff.
So from a departmental standpoint, from an athletic department, there's several sports that these schools offer, and I'm looking in the history of your program. You've got 4 state championships dating back to 71, 95, 2002, and then 2014. What is the standpoint of the relevance of the wrestling program within the athletics department at Cerritos?
I feel a great relevance here. I've always felt, and I'm not in the athletic department. That's one thing that is a little bit tough, is I'm a counselor for disabled students at the college. So I'm not working every day in the department down there, but I've always felt that I've had a voice. When I first started coaching here, Jeff Smith, who was one of the former coaches here for the longest time, he was the athletic director. So I definitely, wrestling had a voice at that point in time. When Jeff decided to retire, we were getting a new athletic director who happened to be a football guy, and that worried me a little bit. But ever since Dan Klaus has been hired, I've always felt like I've had a voice, and I've felt like I've been supported, and the program's been supported. So I don't know if that's because of the history, or if I don't know if that's just the culture here at Cerritos, where they're going to give that support to all their athletic programs.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, because I talked with one of the other California coaches last week, and not sure if this is out there public knowledge or not, but I understand there's a pretty good push to try to get women's wrestling involved in the California community colleges. Got any feedback on that topic?
Yeah, I mean there is a push, and I really feel that there's a need. I think and we talk about it all the time at our meetings and things like that. I think the problem is that no one's come up with a plan on how we're going to, institute this. It's kind of just getting thrown on us coaches, where, just to be honest, I don't have any interest in being a women's coach at this point in time. I would support a women's program. I would help whoever was running the program. But, I have my season. I have my team. I have my focus. I think that plan needs to be put in place to hire these coaches and create the financial support and things like that. I don't think it can just be dumped on the existing coaches. That would be like, taking the basketball coach and saying, hey, you're gonna handle and run the women's team also. It's a lot more work than just that. So I think that's the biggest thing is there's a need. I feel like it's important, but I think the plan has to be put together that isn't going to rest on the shoulders of people that are already doing a lot of work at this time. Yeah, because
of course, the relevance of women's wrestling in California, you see it in Fargo each year. I mean, there's thousands of girls out there that wrestle. There's now a state tournament. But, looking at the dynamic of how you guys are, I mean, you said you're a counselor at the school there, but a lot of the coaches within California are part-time coaches. They're doing something else. Very few of them are actually full-time, professors. I know, Coach Pacheco has been teaching up at Sac City for a long time, but he was part-time for a very long time. So you add that element to it. But from there's also the budget question, I think, that comes up because that's where some of the drops have come within the California community system has been, the state budget has been kind of in a riz for a while. Is that a concern about bringing on women's programs and more sports in general? Be like, okay, now how are we going to pay for these?
Right. I think that's one of the biggest concerns, is where's this money going to come from? Is it going to be split from the men's program? Well, I don't particularly think that's fair. I mean, we have just enough to survive through our season. Like I said, I feel Cerritos is one of the better supported programs. I mean, there's a lot of programs that are struggling just to stay alive financially. They don't get as much support from their schools. So now you're going to add another program and put that on the same coaches and on the same budget. And now everybody's going to fail, I think there needs to be a good plan in place on where this money is going to come from and who are going to run these programs and stuff. I mean, we have a girl on our team right now. She's awesome. She works her butt off. She does everything the boys do, and now we're going to some tournaments. Like we went to the West Hills tournament and there were enough girls there that we actually ran a girls bracket for it. And I just want it known right now that, Nadia Escamilla from Cerritos College won the first girls bracket in California junior college state history. So I want to put that out there, that we had the first champion. So
that's a great nugget right there. I love that. Yeah. I love that.
So we already made some history here, but it was great. I mean, they ran that bracket right alongside with our, the men's tournament and stuff, and the girls competed hard, and I think everyone enjoyed it. So, the need is there. In California, we have the girls. We just have to get the plan in place, and I think it would take off. I really do, and I think in the long run, it would support the men's programs also.
Now, the one question, again, this is getting into the devil's in the details. We're carts way ahead of the horse on this one, but if there was a thought, and say in a perfect world, okay, we've got a women's program at these schools within California. Now, there's the question: the WCWA does freestyle, and their season's a little different from the men's, the Division I, Division II. They start now and then end in February. Where do you see this schedule working in? Do you think a style is another issue? It's like, okay, are we going to go folk style? Are we going to go freestyle? Are we going to stay in the fall? I mean, these are some of the things I want to know right now, but we obviously can't, but they are fun to talk about.
I definitely think we would have to align with whatever the next level was doing for these girls. I think it would be a disservice to them for us to do one style when if they went to the next level, they were going to wrestle a different style. So I definitely think we need to be in line with whatever the four-year colleges are doing. And as far as season, we have the luxury of maybe not doing the same season as the 4 years, just like we don't with our men. But I definitely think the style needs to be the same. I also think that maybe we should start some of these women's programs at colleges that don't have men's wrestling, in the junior college, because I think in the long run, that's going to help both. We start these programs at colleges that don't have men's. Now they're purchasing mats. They're doing all this. Now it becomes easier to start men's programs at those colleges, and then vice versa, then start to bring in the girls' programs at colleges that already have men's programs. I think the whole thing would grow if we looked at it that way.
Now, what was the situation at El Camino as far as that? I'm unfamiliar with what happened with that program.
As far as them dropping the program?
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of theories. Back then, the misinterpretation of Title IX was an issue a little bit. There were some I think personal issues between the coaching staff that was there and some of the higher up administrators at that time. It's kind of heartbreaking for me because both of the programs that I belong to now, don't have programs any longer. We actually just had our 25th anniversary at Chico State up at Chico of the wrestling program being dropped. So we had a lot of guys there, and of course everyone's getting together and talking about getting the program started again and do all these things. So it was a bad situation all around for wrestling in California.
I want to shift gears now and talk about this current season. We've talked a lot about the history and the depth of your program and where it comes from and how you're coaching kids. But this season, you're off to a good start. 8-0 in dual meets. You've got a tournament title, and you just finished third recently at the Santa Ana tournament, finishing behind Palomar and Mount San Antonio. A couple individual performances have been good. I mean, what is it about this team? I mean, 8-0 in dual meets, that's a strong start, and you guys have been pretty dominant on the mats.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a really strong team this year. There's a couple other teams that are strong. This weekend we sat four of our guys out that will be going to the regionals and state for us. I think they were a little banged up, and we're kind of coming into an important part of the season, so I didn't feel like pushing them. But Palomar looked very strong this weekend. Mount Sac, like always, is starting to kind of juggle guys around and get guys down to weights and stuff, so they're going to be strong. Coach Pacheco's program at Sac City is always very deep, and I know they're going to be making some moves to get people in the positions they need. And then Fresno City, that you never count out Pete Keesaw or the kids in that program. So again, I think once it comes down to it and everybody gets everybody where they need to have them, it's going to be a tight, hard-fought race to win a championship.
And who are some guys that are really kind of stepping up here? I mean, I've seen a couple tournament titles from a 41-pounder, and then we've got. I'm looking through. You've got like 6 different guys that have won tournament titles across the last 2 weeks of competition. I mean, what do you got? What do you got kind of sitting there that people should pay attention to if they want to hear about some good wrestling?
We got 133s. Anthony Vargas. He was our state runner-up last year. He's been very consistent. He only has 1 loss on the season, and it was to the kid from Mount Sac who he's beaten twice during this season, but they've all been close matches. So, he's a very consistent wrestler, very tough wrestler, so I could see him making a push for the title. Our 141-pounder, Richard Pocock, is undefeated this year, and he's won all the tournaments he's been in. He's solid. He's probably one of our most solid wrestlers in every position. He's a great student also. So he's, if he finishes this season strong, I think he'll be a great pickup for a program at the 4-year level. Let's see, 49s. We're pretty good at 49s, 57s, 65s. We have a kid, Blake Vasquez, who he ended up wrestling in the finals this weekend, almost blind. He busted his eye open. They had to tape him up, so one complete eye was covered, so he lost in the finals in a close match, but he did it with one eye. So I think his performances will be a little bit better if we don't have to tape him up in the future. And then we have a 197-pounder who actually hasn't wrestled in either of the tournaments yet that I think he's not going to surprise me, but I think people are going to be pretty surprised at his performances. I think he's definitely the best kid in the state. He just hasn't been able to wrestle in 2 of the tournaments that we've wrestled in. So I think we're 12 deep. I think that we have 12 stable guys that are going to help us chase after the state title this year.
I mean, and when you come in with a goal like that, and you got guys that have been there that are in their second year wrestling, how do you set the goals? Do you know you're coming in like, okay, I got 4 or 5 guys that have placed that are coming in for their second year. They're not going to redshirt. I mean, how soon do you realize during a season or a preseason that like, wow, I think I got a shot to win the state championship?
Well, I think you have an idea. I've been doing it long enough where I can kind of tell, from the kids' high school performance and watching them in high school, which ones will translate good to this level of wrestling. Once you finally get them all in the room so that you have them and someone else hasn't swooped in and got them before they got in your room, you start to kind of figure it out then. And I think the biggest thing is I think I figure it out before they do. I think that they need to start working and wrestling each other, and they kind of figure out their position on the team and things like that. So, it's pretty early on. You feel like you know what you got. You just don't know what everybody else has. So, I knew we were going to have a strong group this year. I just didn't know what everybody else had until we started getting out and wrestling a little bit.
So you got the 2 years. What are your thoughts on redshirting? I mean, how do you deal with that? Because like you said, you've got a guy that's a state runner up. If he's got aspirations at the next level, do you work with the athlete individually, or is it a team discussion? Be like, all right, this is what's best for our team. This is what's best for us. I kind of always err on the side of the athlete more than what's best for our team, but it seems to work out for us better. I really feel like we're just a springboard to get them to the next level. It's about education. It's about, doing whatever you can do to get whatever sort of assistance you can get at the next level to help you finish your education, whether it's money or just interest or whatever it is. So, for me, the whole redshirt thing is on an individual basis. I don't really like freshmen to redshirt their first year if I feel they can be competitive at this level, because I think that if they can be competitive, they need that year of competition here to see what they need to work on in case they decide to redshirt the following year. So, like I said, I feel they can be competitive, I want them to wrestle this year, and then we can talk about redshirting, later on. So when we look at some of these teams that have come through in your era and coaching high school kids a long time, and then wrestling in California, what are some of these athletes that you remember that they're like, man, that they really made a splash in California and then went on to do huge things at the next level? Whether that next level be Division II or Division I, coming through your era, the late '80s here.
Coming through the junior colleges or just through California wrestling? Junior
colleges that you've seen that have used this league, as you said you're a springboard. What athletes did you see back in that era that did use this as a springboard that you remember, like, these guys were fantastic?
Oh, so back when I was wrestling.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some old school history here. I'm trying to learn a little bit, Don.
Okay, all right. Well, like I said, that era, I don't want to say that JC wrestling was tougher back then. I just feel like kids have more access to other colleges now. We didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have social media. We didn't have ways for other colleges to know about our kids, really. So a lot of the California kids, unless you were big time, unless you were Lawrence Jackson or Mark Girardi or someone like that, you kind of went to the junior college, so there were a lot more high school state placers wrestling in the junior college at that point in time. So a lot of those kids would transition to the next level, whether it was Division I or Division II, and would have a lot of success at that level. Now, a lot of our kids that are placing in the high school state, whether, not champions and things like that, but our 4, 5, and 6s are getting a lot more exposure to four-year colleges right out of high school. We get a lot of bounce backs, though. We get a lot of those kids that take off, head for the Midwest, and maybe weren't quite ready to handle the Midwest, whether it's the weather or being away from home or whatever. So, they'll struggle their first year, and then they bounce back, and we pick them up in the junior college here, now. But, back when I was wrestling, there was a lot of kids that went on to, Division II All-Americans, and back then we had quite a few, Division I All-Americans at that time, too. Like there were some kids from Fresno City, the Thinkins. Oh no, I don't think they were JC. Oh man, I'm starting to get old. It's hard to remember. But there were a lot of Division I All-Americans at that time also.
Now, one unique thing that Cerritos does have, and this is a little after that time, but it's been probably about 15 years now, is there is a wrestling Olympian that's come from Cerritos. Heath Sims.
Yeah, Heath Sims wrestled here at Cerritos College both years. He was first in the state and second in the state one year, and then was an Olympian in Greco-Roman for the United States.
Yeah, so that's got to be a cool thing to you can even pitch that every now and be like, yeah, you got a Greco-Roman Olympian here. He wrestled here. We can produce Olympians. You ever use that on the pitch?
Right. I mean, why not? It's the California junior college system is not below anybody's standard. If an Olympian can come in here and compete and then move on to his Olympic status. So yeah, we can definitely use that.
All right, Don, in the time we've got left, just want to get some just general thoughts about, we touched on things for people that don't know about the California community college system, but in terms of scheduling, it is the fall sport. We've kind of beaten that to death a little bit with some of the other interviews we had. But when you're scheduling, I noticed you're going duels, and then I look. Most of the teams have a similar type of setup. It's like, all right, we start out with either a tournament or duels, then a dual tournament, and then a tournament, and then we get to the single duels, and then we have the state duels, and then we come back and finish up with the tournaments. I mean, how does your scheduling philosophy vary from year to year? Or is it something that all you guys out there seem to kind of have a similar pattern with how you schedule duels, tournaments, and single duels?
Well, I mean, that's the one thing about us being a fall sport is we don't have a lot of opportunities to vary our schedules too much, because it's basically just us wrestling at that time. So whatever tournament's going on that weekend, we have to get to. I mean, as far as my philosophy, I like to get a couple dual tournaments first. One, I can wrestle a lot of different kids that way and get a look at them and kind of see, number one, what we need to work on as a program. That's after those tournaments, we set up a lot of our practice plans depending on what we see in those dual tournaments. And I can wrestle a lot of kids and not get them too beat up, because I can have one kid wrestle 2 duels and another kid wrestle the other 2 duels and things like that. So hopefully we don't get too beat up early on. One thing I do try to do is later in the season when the 4 years start is try and get us a little bit more variation. For a couple of years, we were actually going up to northern Idaho, and we were wrestling in like a 4-way at northern Idaho Junior College, which is National JC. We'd wrestle Clackamas, we'd wrestle northern Idaho, Highline, a couple NAI schools, things like that. And then the next day we were going to a tournament that was in Spokane, Washington. So we did that for a couple of years just to give us the different people to wrestle with and our kids a little more exposure. But recently, Simpson College in Sac City, Dave Pacheco have set up this 4-way duel up in Northern California where 4 out-of-state teams come in and 4 California teams rotate and wrestle those out-of-state teams. So I've kind of switched to that now for the last 2 years. So,
yeah, and that's another thing that comes up is, of course, the question about why isn't California why aren't they going to the NJCAA? And I think that's been one that's often asked. But the theory I've heard from these coaches, one, you guys like it in the fall. You're used to it. It's been doing it like that for 30-something years at this point. But, when you get an opportunity to wrestle the North Idahos, the Clackamas's, the Highlines, as you mentioned, what's that dynamic like to be like, all right, this is we're 2 junior colleges. We'll never see each other in a postseason. It's got to be a unique environment.
Yeah, it is. And I started doing it just because, a couple of the national JC coaches were coming into California and recruiting and saying, hey, we're much better than the California JCs. We're much better. And I knew that wasn't true. So that's why I started going up and trying, North Idaho and Clackamas were 2 of the top junior colleges. So we went up and started, competing with them and stuff. And we hold our own just fine with them. I feel like the top 4 teams in California would be, a top 10 or 12 team in the national JC every year. Last year, Sac City, beat Clackamas, and Fresno, I think, lost to them by 1 match, and they were missing 3 of their guys. So, our top teams are going to be competitive with them. And I like to, let our kids know, hey, look, we're competitive with these teams, and all you guys come from 30 miles from this college. They're getting kids from all over the country and stuff. So, it's different dynamic, and I like Coach Roden a lot. We joke a lot, and I rib him a lot about different things, and he's got a good sense of humor about it. But I also got to stand firm that the California JCs are competitive, and kids can springboard to the next level from here. So.
I do have one question in regards to the situation in California as regards to John Sachs and the wonderful work he does with the photos. Is it like a prerequisite that you've got to have like a sleeve tattoo to wrestle in California junior colleges?
I mean, is that something that seems predominant in California, or is that just?
I don't know, because I go through some of these great photos and I'm like, man, that's a nasty sleeve tat. That's awesome. Oh, that's good. Because I like tattoo. I got a couple myself and I'm just like, oh, that's good. And then I realize like every single guy has got something like on his shoulder, like a koi or a dragon or something. It's like,
well, they all have to prepare for their MMA careers because all of them are going to be, highly successful MMA fighters at some point in time. I think maybe that I need to get a couple more because I don't think John gets enough pictures of me. I think the world needs a few more pictures of me out there. So if I got to get a couple tattoos for him to do that, I may have to do that.
Just a thought, because that's one thing. Whenever the Tech Fall galleries go up, it's like, ooh, it's like looking through like a tattoo convention magazine. The stuff's just that good. Oh, it's fantastic. The wrestlers out there have some fantastic work. Now, there's a couple that are a little sketchy, but the work overall I found is pretty good, especially if you're a tattoo aficionado. Now, last segment we got on the show, it's a little blast segment called Short Time. I'm going to ask you 10 questions in 90 seconds. I'm going to see if you can answer them in the first thing that comes to your head. I don't want to put too much thought into this, just ready to roll. Are you ready for the challenge?
I don't put too much thought into anything. All right, yeah, I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, question 1. What's the best match you've ever watched?
Best match I've ever watched was McElravy and Abbas, finals of the NCAAs.
Who's the best wrestler people don't talk about?
The best wrestler people don't talk about. Well, I'll tell you, I think the best wrestler from California ever has been Lawrence Jackson, and I think he's starting to get, as time goes on, he's starting to get forgotten a little bit.
You win the Olympic gold. What do you have for dinner?
I win the Olympic gold. What do I have for dinner? I definitely have a nice big steak and probably fries with gravy over the top.
I like where your head's at there. All-time favorite flavor of Gatorade?
I'm traditional. I like the green flavor. What is that? Lime?
Lemon lime.
Yeah.
All right. Number 5. Best wrestling movie.
Best wrestling movie. I mean, it's got to be Vision Quest, probably.
Favorite international wrestler.
Favorite international wrestler. I like that Cuban kid who went to Italy. Is that Chamizo?
Yeah, Frank Chamizo. Yeah, good call there. All right.
I like watching him wrestle.
You win the Powerball. What's the first college wrestling program you're going to start?
Win the Powerball. What's the first? Chico State.
No, that's the obvious answer there. All right, Angels or Dodgers?
Angels.
Thank you. Yes, you are now my favorite coach in California. Sorry, Dave Pacheco. I am a diehard Angels fan. This has been a rough season.
Christ, I mean, Trout is a wrestler playing baseball, isn't he?
Yeah, he definitely plays like it. That's for sure. All right, favorite restaurant on the planet?
I love Benihana's.
That's a good one. Started by a wrestler. I like where your head's at. And
Rocky Aoki.
What is your spirit animal?
My spirit animal is a spider monkey.
Spider monkey. I'm going to need some more on that. Why?
Because a lot of my friends call me Spider Monkey. I tend to get, I'm a very calm person, but when I get excited, I probably go from 0 to 100 pretty quick.
All right. Wow. Okay. The Spider Monkey. Ray Brinzer was a sea otter. That was an interesting one we got from him. But Don, I'd like to thank you for your time. Basically anything you got left for wrestling fans that pay attention, not just to Cerritos, but the wrestlers out in California. This is kind of your forum to take us home.
Yeah, just coaches that are out there for your coaches. Make sure you're looking at our kids throughout the season, because I think they can help a lot of programs out there. And Jason, I really appreciate everything you do for wrestling, and specifically, including California Junior College Wrestling in your thoughts and in your show and stuff. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Every time I go out to California, well, I don't actually go out to California, but every time I talk California Community College Wrestling, I come away with a little bit more knowledge than I did before, and I hope you did too with Coach Donnie Garriott out there from Cerritos. So, of note with the California Community Colleges, if you are on MadTalkOnline.com right now, and if you are not, you should go there right now. And if you are on a full kind of browser device that's not your phone, you can go to the right side of the page and you will see a link to the California Community College dual meet standings and the dual meet scores list. The dual meet scores list is where you'll find all the dual meet scores for this coming college season as well as a tournament link. So right now you can click on those links on MadTalkOnline.com, the only place in the country you can find the California Community College dual meet standings in the 4 conferences, and they are right on MadTalkOnline.com. Now, I want to give John Sachs' website a little bit of a plug. You know him from TechFall.com. Well, he also runs CACCWrestling.com. That is a resource to get all sorts of information on California Community College Wrestling. Of course, he shoots so many great pictures, as we mentioned, with all the tattoos that we were joking about earlier. couple things I want to shoot down the pipe here right now, and they're not always the greatest of news. A couple people that have recently passed away that I want to just let you know about them. Ed Mahoney. He was a wrestling fan. He was a Facebook friend of mine. I honestly didn't know him very well, just through some brief conversations on Facebook and through some mutual friends. Learned of his passing, so thoughts and condolences to his family. Dan Hinkle, longtime coach at Kutztown University in Pennsylvania, 85 years old. This guy was an institution at Kutztown, which is just out. It's the central Pennsylvania, so Lancaster, you head east a bit, you'll go right through Kutztown, and Coach Hinkle was an interesting guy. He was a guy I got to meet a couple times. Didn't really know him too well. My coworker at the NWCA, Pat Tossi, coached with him at Kutztown for a while. So, Hinks, may you be up there and sitting on the sidelines of that wrestling mat in the sky. I've never heard a bad thing about you, sir. And again, thoughts, prayers, and all the condolences and great memories of Coach Hinkle out at Kutztown. And a friend of mine who I haven't seen in some time. Actually, was a kid I got to cover a lot when he was coming through high school. Jordan Adams. He's 2003 state place winner in Virginia AAA. And him and his twin brother Jarrell were at Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk, Virginia. And their friend and teammate John Williams. So those three, they would go around to every tournament they could find to get better. They were working on, they were kind of the lifeblood of that Booker T team, and those were the guys that were making the regional finals and being state place winners. Jordan Adams had made the regional finals, I believe, his senior year, the year that he had finished third. I believe he was in the regional finals against Christian Smith, who ended up being a 3-time state champion from Western Branch. Actually was an NCAA qualifier for Duke and Liberty in his career. But I found out through Twitter via Bubba Jenkins, another Virginia guy. As I said, you've heard on the show that we go way back, and that Jordan Adams passed away after fighting cancer. And I had not seen Jordan in a very, very long time. But as soon as Bubba put that tweet out, I'm like, wait a minute, like the Booker T, like one of the twins? And, Jordan and Jarrell, they were spark plugs, man. They were just fun kids to be around in that era. That was an era where I was about 22 years old, 23, coming through, really kind of getting my feet wet with the journalism thing, and, got to understand what these were inner city kids. I mean, Booker T. Washington's not in the best neighborhood in the city of Norfolk. I mean, it is in a tough spot, and these kids got had wrestling to keep them away from trouble and kind of teach them the values. And both of them, all three of those kids, as I say kids now, they're probably in their 30s, but at least with John and Jarrell. And just thoughts go out to Jordan Adams, the family. I haven't seen him in probably 13 years. It's been a long, long time, but the memories I have of Jordan, Jarrell, and John are they're so much fun. I remember they would go in. I remember they'd go in and just horse some people. I mean, there's this one guy that liked to come in and say he was training for the Olympics. He'd enter these tournaments and he'd try to wrestle these high school kids. And Jordan Adams went out there and just beat the ever-loving piss out of him one day. And it was like all us guys at ODU were like, "Yeah, that's right, Jordan Adams. You do work, son," because he went out there and just basically laid it on this poser, for lack of a better term. And that's I have some very fond memories of Jordan Adams and his brother. But thoughts and prayers to the Adams contingent out there. Who knows where they are now? I think they might be still back in Virginia. Moving on to happier thoughts, I'm just extremely excited about the season we've got coming up on the Matt Talk Podcast Network. Gable Stevenson will be coming on to the Guillotine Grapevine. He'll also be making an appearance on Bonus Points. So Richard Immel and I were joking that I was like, "Hey, man, I got Gable coming on this week." And he goes, "Yeah, so do I." So we try to coordinate these things, but sometimes, what they say, great minds think alike. With the network, I also want to say that we are gracious enough to have Cliff Fretwell and his crew at Compound Clothing as a clothing sponsor of this show. If you want to check out the items that they've got, you've got to outfit your team coming up this season. They've got some cool, very, very just hot stuff. I mean, this is stuff that, the kids are wearing with their newfangled bell bottoms and all. No, this is the stuff that kids want to wear. I mean, this is the stuff my wife will not let me wear because I'm 37 years old, and I just don't have that look that I can wear an awesome. I'm not going to wear any more sublimated singlets. The Halloween thing that happened last year, not going to happen again. But Cliff Fretwell and his crew at Compound at cmpteamwear.com can get you outfitted today. Slick artists, they did some nasty stuff, like really good stuff. They're the ones who redesigned the Matt Talk Online logo and redesigned the Short Time Wrestling Podcast logo, as well as so many different things. So give Cliff and his crew just a tremendous group of people. They quick, prompt service. They are the ones who provide me my hats and shirts, and even my daughter and my friends' kids now have Matt Talk. They're outfitted in Matt Talk Online, like little itty bitty things. So I don't quite have a onesie for Ruby yet, but what's the point? Because she'll just grow out of it in a heartbeat. They're a gear sponsor, but this show is essentially ad-free. Save that plug for Compound. And to keep it ad-free, I'm honestly, I wouldn't like to have some sponsors here. But at the same point, if you listen to podcasts frequently, you're going to hear, the ads for MeUndies and Casper mattresses and MailChimp and, FreshBooks and all that stuff. I don't want to bombard you with that type of stuff at the beginning of the show. So to keep the lights on in all of these shows devoid of that type of corporate advertising. Now, we do have sponsors like Fort Monty Merch for the Buena Vista show. He is a BV alum, that's covering the cost of that show. But the vast majority of these programs are listener supported. So if you want to contribute to this network and get some cool stuff and get access to some cool things, go to matttalkonline.com/join the team. There's you can go give $1 a month. If you think that 25 podcasts a month that we're producing is worth $1 a month, please give $1 a month. If it's worth $10 a month, please give $10 a month. If it's worth more than that, you're going to get a lot of cool stuff. But hey, give that much. That's the thing. This is listener supported, and yes, it's a one-man shop. Richard has got bonus points. Kyle's got On the Mat. Earl's got Sudden History, and Jeff and Eric have PA Power. But the other 10 shows here on the network and the other 2 that are archived, that's all a one-man shop. So keep that in mind when you listen to this content each and every week, and know that it's I've got a team of 10 fingers here with the shows that I produce. So if you are willing and able, matttalkonline.com/join the team. It'll help me produce this show further and further along. It'll help me produce the National Wrestling Hall of Fame's Legends series, which I'm building a nice little archive of interviews that I can put out to preserve the stories of the wrestling greats. That's pretty much all I've got for this episode. Donnie Garriott, you just pay attention to the California guys, because there's wrestling going on right now. We should be paying attention to this. Now, they struggle with getting the word out sometimes, but guess what? They've got some good wrestling out there, and it's wrestling. And they're going to be wrestling at the next level someday, because just like the junior colleges and the NJCAA, these kids will be going to 4-year schools within a year or two. So you're going to see them sooner than later. Why not get a sneak peek at them now? So for Donnie Garriott and our patrons at the Matt Talk Podcast Network and our team members who make this show possible, including, like I said, I got to give Rodney Williams another shout out, because he's the one that really helped me with a little bit of nudge there with Garriott and the Chico State thing. So Rod, you get like 2 shout outs today, maybe 3, because I've just mentioned you a third time. So thank you for your support, because you know what? It's the ears of people like Rodney Williams, the ears of people that contribute to this network each and every month because they like the content. Philip Merrill, you are due on the show soon, by the way, sir. Hope you know that, up there in Michigan. That's one of the perks. He has got the perk that he's going to get to co-host the show. So he's not going to co-host the show. He's going to be a guest on the show. He's finding that out now. So that being said, matttalkonline.com/join the team. If you haven't already done so, rate, review on iTunes, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your grandma, tell your uncle, tell the guy across the street that likes wrestling that you don't like. I mean, tell the guy you call to fix your plumbing. Yeah, today I called Benjamin Franklin Plumbing. The guy who answered the phone, his cousin's Mitchell McKee. Come on. Yeah. Or is it nephew? I don't know. It was a family member of Mitchell McKee, because he laughed when I said something about Mitchell's man bun. Anyway, that's all I got today. Last thing, real quick. And this is something that I don't know what the Blood Round guys are going to do with this, because, again, they're not on the network. But I have this idea. We've heard some tall tales in our day. My friend Tony Black, who works at USA Wrestling, has a theory that everybody in wrestling was a state champion. And here's what it is. That you always know somebody. It's like, oh, yeah, my brother wrestled. Oh, he was a state champ. Of course he was. Oh, yeah, my buddy at work wrestled. He was really good. I think he was a state champ in New Mexico. Yeah, of course he was a state champ. The joke was that Travis Shives, who used to work with us at USA Wrestling and now works for Sport Engine, was the only guy in wrestling that was never a state champ because he was a state runner-up. And he says, nope, I was second in the state. So that was the joke is that everybody's a state champ. Well, I want to take this one further. We always know that person that likes to over-embellish their abilities and talents. And I will say this, I can fit my wrestling career when it comes to the mat on a Post-it note. And it's not that glamorous. Matter of fact, it's horrendous, to be quite honest with you. But there's always that person that's like, yeah, I did this, I did this. I want you to send me the best wrestling lie you've ever heard of. And I'm going to give you an example. In probably 2006, 2007, I'm living in Pennsylvania, and I'm at this Irish dive bar called Brendy's in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, home of the Lancaster City League dart champions, the Brendy's Dart Sharks, captained by one Nate Shy, and I was on said team. I actually have the dart trophy to prove it. And me and Nate are in there one night, and Nate's actually wearing a Minnesota wrestling shirt, and we're just sitting there, having a good time, and some guy is sitting there going, he's some dumbass, for lack of a better term. He's sitting there trying to talk to these girls, and he sees Nate's Minnesota wrestling shirt, and he's like, "Oh yeah, dude, I wrestled, man. I wrestled at UCLA." And this guy, and at the time I'm probably 27, 28, and this guy was probably maybe a year or two older than me. He definitely had a lot less teeth than I did, but that's anything else. Anyway, but he's sitting there and saying, "Yeah, man, the only guys I lost to were Brock Lesnar and Shelton Benjamin." And I'm sitting there like the inner part of me wants to be like, and Nate just kind of like stops me in the chest and goes, "Really? I want to hear more." And he basically gets this guy to tell this incredibly terrible lie about wrestling, one, in an era that UCLA didn't have a team, two, Brock Lesnar and Shelton Benjamin were never on the same team at the University of Minnesota together, and three, they are not in your weight class. He then proceeded to tell us he got arrested for piracy, and we're not talking about Napster piracy. We're talking about like stealing a sailboat. So this guy's, a couple cards short of whatever analogy, simile, metaphor you want to think of. Yeah, this guy comes up, yeah, okay, I wrestled in college at UCLA, false, and I wrestled Shelton Benjamin, false, and Brock Lesnar, false, and they're the only two guys I lost to, false. I'm the guy that used to call those people out. I'd be like, no, I was there. You definitely did not. Yeah, so I want to hear the best wrestling lie you've ever heard of and what you did to call that person out. That's not necessarily a nice thing, but sometimes you just don't, don't BS a BSer, I know stats. I can look something up in 10 seconds and validate whether you were or weren't an All-American at a tournament you say you were. Chances are, because I was there, and if I wasn't, I can tell you where to get it. So I'm just curious. I told the Blood Round guys to do this. So, I want to hear your best wrestling lie. And, it can be fun. It can be the time like your buddy was trying to get a girl's number and he got his spot blown up by a teammate who didn't realize that he was just trying to spit some game. So I want to hear something amusing, funny, and it's not intended to be vindictive, although sometimes people just need to be called on their crap, man. And there's definitely some people out there, especially in the world of Twitter, you know who you are, and please don't bring that near me. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you, and you. Yeah, even you. You're cool. No, I'm not going to do the whole half-baked line. But anyway, thank you for listening to the show. I appreciate it. Thank you for spending your time with me multiple times a week on various shows, because you've always got time for short time. Even if I spend all this time trying to close a show very poorly. Hoser.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.